whenever you go to Liberty University, you run into the most amazing leaders. One is a longtime friend, a regular guest on the Economic War Room, Major General Bob Dees. He's U.S. Army retired. He really built here as Vice President of Military Outreach at Liberty University. I think he's moved on from there, but he built it, and they have the Institute for Military Resilience here at Liberty. Welcome, General Dees, back to Economic War Room.
Good to be with you, Kevin. Yeah.
So give us an update. I mean, you did a lot of the strategic understanding and planning for our military for quite a while. What's going on in the world? It seems very tumultuous right now. What are you seeing?
Yeah. Well, do you have a week? No. Well, just water skiing around the world, if you will. Obviously, in Resilient Nations, I wrote about the challenges of appeasement on the domestic side and on the international side. And I think, frankly, in our nation, we're seeing the downsides of appeasement that's happening. Certainly, if you want to go on the domestic side, you look at the Great Society and how the Great Society ended up with the loss of black family and things like that. So these unintended consequences are playing out today in many ways.
Unintended, or maybe cultural Marxism.
Could be, that's right. I don't know if it was cultural Marxism back then. Probably, but I do know what it looks like now, and it is definitely, and it plays out on the streets of America and the crime problems and everything we see. So that's domestically. Now, internationally, appeasement, we understand the downfalls of appeasement, and peace through strength is the proper long-term policy. We've seen that in many of our great presidents, and we've seen the opposite in many of our weak presidents, and then in other hierarchies around the world.
Well,
Neville Chamberlain,
like we have
obviously.
Weak president right now. I mean, and all credit to him, but he looks elderly. He's acting elderly. He was not even, they said, well, he's literally not enough there to stand trial, so we're not going to charge him with things. But that's playing out around the world. Where's America's position globally?
Yeah, well, Normandy was embarrassing at the 80th anniversary. With Dr. Ben Carson in the presidential campaign, I used to make the stump speech. I'd say, this man has handled more 2 a.m. calls in the morning, crises, life-death situations than anybody on the trail. Well, of our president today, I'm convinced he can't handle a 2 a.m. call of crisis. He can't even handle a 2 p.m. call. And we're seeing that in his public display, and there's a lot of backfill, as you know, among the administration and the liberal press that say, okay, well, he's really sharp as a tack. It just has stumble every now and then. Well, that's not true. So where do we stand? I think appeasement invites adventurism. We're seeing that. We're seeing that China, Russia, Iran, through their surrogates in particular. We've funded Iran to fund their surrogates. So
is Hamas a surrogate of Iran?
Of course. An interesting story. I don't know if we've talked about this before. In 2000 to 2002, I was commander of the U.S.-Israeli Combined Task Force for Missile Defense. I was in country one time, and the ambassador was out, and so I was sort of the stuckee, and they came and got me out of bed at night, the Israeli Special Operations guys. They took me down to the port of Eilat, which is on the north end of the Red Sea, and they had, in fact, taken down a ship. And it was a curious ship because it was based out of Iran, had an Iranian crew, and they laid out, they had the crew that they were interrogating, but laid out all the weapons. And when they laid out the weapon systems, they found it was just Katyusha rockets, normal stuff, conventional, but they were very high-tech shipping containers. These shipping containers, they would put the weapons inside, the ship would go through the Suez Canal into the Mediterranean off the coast of Gaza, and underneath the bottom of the ship would drop out these shipping containers that would float about 10 feet below the water. The Gaza fishermen would come out, innocently fish, grab these containers, take them to underground caves, and then the next day they would be rockets headed to Israel. That was interesting in itself, the tactics, but strategically that was Shia Iran supplying Sunni Hamas on the Gaza Strip. And that was one of the earliest smoking guns that we know that those people were collaborating among the sects of Islam to that degree.
Wow.
And then today it's even.
It seems more obvious even today.
Right, that's right.
So where are we with Israel? I know criminal charges being brought against Netanyahu and against Israel and so forth in these international tribunals and courts and so forth, which is a lawfare like we're seeing with President Trump. What's happening on ground with Israel? Do you keep in touch with your colleagues?
Yeah, a bit, and you know, I don't necessarily know that much more, but because of the experience, I have a different lens and can interpret what we see.
And
as
you're called
world
upon to explain what's happening in Israel.
Oh yeah. Well, since October 7th, I've just had a whole plethora of TV and news interviews about that. Israel's God's people. When I first visited Israel, I lived in a kibbutz on Naf Ginosar when I was a young adult, just coming out of West Point. And the lady next to me, the Israeli IDF female soldier, had her weapon right between us in the movie as we were watching the movie. And I said, whoa, this is different. And so it reminded me of the strategic warning time in Israel that's measured in seconds versus the United States, weeks, months, years. And so they are always on razor alert, and that's very important. I don't know why we had an intelligence failure, seemingly, on October 7th. It was tragic. Shouldn't have happened. I don't know if there's anything nefarious there, but whatever it was, I was very surprised because I have great confidence in the IDF. I've worked with them. I was for 2 years operating with them, the whole integrated air defense system, Iron Dome, Davis Sling, all those things. And so we saw the results of that professionalism when the Iranian attack came, but not on October 7th. I think they have a whole bunch of warfighting expertise, they have resources. It's regrettable that the United States has not supported them. After Vietnam, there was a book called Uncertain Trumpet, and it talked about the defeat in Vietnam and how U.S. was on again, off again, on again, off again. Well, that's the way President Biden and the administration of President have been. Yeah, we support Israel unconditionally. And then they start doing X, Y, and Z to include the ICC. Yes, the ICC came on board. Biden said shouldn't be happening, but never has this administration fully leaned into support of Israel. And I think we disregard Israel at our great risk as a nation, not only politically.
I think that's a shocking truth that most Americans don't know. You turn on the news and the sound bites that we're fed say we're very much supporting Israel, very much in favor.
Right.
But on the ground, I don't believe that they're feeling it to anywhere near that degree. I think it's purposeful. I think it's a misdirection for the American people.
I agree. As a military person, I'm indignant about the way they prosecute the Israelis for randomly creating casualties on the battlefield. The Israelis have been more discreet about this than any modern democracy I know.
We're going to have to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk more.
Thank you.
In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com. We're talking with Major General Bob Dees. We're here at Liberty University. He's got an amazing facility not far from the campus here, and we'll talk about that in the third segment. But we were talking about what's going on around the world. We hit Israel. General Dees, let's talk about now China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine. What are your perspective on that?
Well, my perspective is same principles apply. Deterrence is the way to go. Lack of deterrence invites adventurism. You can't see more adventurism than what we're seeing in communist China today. President Xi has aggressive military development, and it's a little scary because their fighter planes, their aircraft carriers, they're this, they're that, looks amazingly like the United States. So the theft of intellectual property on the military side and on the economic side. Perhaps even more disturbing is their intrusiveness into the very woodwork of America. The Chinese police stations, if you want to call them that, around the country, the degree to which they have infiltrated. We've been infiltrated by many people across the southern border, from China, from Russia, a lot of things, of course, and it's a little scary. So after 9/11, I came back to the United States as soon as I could get back. Went to an intelligence place in eastern U.S., and they had cell phone calls that were originating in Afghanistan and terminating in the United States. Very quickly, in about 30 seconds, I saw the degree to which we had been infiltrated. When we see calls going into Lackawanna, New York, where we finally found a terrorist cell, in Nashville, Tennessee, Greensboro, North Carolina, Dearborn, Michigan. There's various sanctuaries of Islam, Muslim folks around the country, but those become sanctuary for some of the more radical terrorists, sleeper cells, et cetera. We are at great risk. That existed 20 years ago. Now just imagine, with the hemorrhaging of the southern border and all that's gone on, what that looks like, to include China. So you ask about China, Taiwan. Well, that's a whole book or a day in itself.
Yeah, they absorbed Hong Kong very quickly using that same tactic.
Yeah.
Hong Kong, I was there not too long before the Chinese take over, and I thought, this is a free city, independent-minded people. They're very Western in approach. They will never, they're gone.
Right. It reminds me of a big fish that opens its mouth, and it doesn't fight that little guppy. It just sucks it in. And I was, yes, when the transition of Hong Kong, I saw that happen. Right now with Taiwan, there's some strategic element to it because of the semiconductor industry, the degree to which we're dependent upon semiconductors. We have a distinct national interest in Taiwan, not just for the preservation of democracy, but also for the preservation of our economic power. They're a hinge point in all of our elements of national power. And the Pacific, during the Obama years, they said, okay, we're going to pivot to the Pacific. Well, it never happened. It never happened. They didn't increase the forces to do that. They just started robbing Peter to pay Paul. And they have something in the military called dual apportioned forces. So you'll have an outfit that's supposed to fight a war in Europe, should it break out, or should Russia expand beyond Ukraine, et cetera. But that same outfit is earmarked to the Pacific. And they abandoned, particularly in this Biden administration, any thoughts of a two major regional conflict strategy. And the net is that, we're paper thin even in one major regional conflict. We haven't talked about military readiness yet. That's abysmal in all the services. But now we've got a failed strategy. We've got poor military readiness to support that strategy. And across the board, we're at great risk, greater than ever before. Even the FBI agent, director is saying that domestically, but we're also saying that internationally.
Well, absolutely with China, we see them infiltrating. I know some of my colleagues in the media have grown silent, even discussing live human organ harvesting.
Yes.
And then you see the attack on Epoch Times, and you see, the voices in the media being silenced, Steve Bannon and so forth, Alex Jones, one after another. Anyone who stood up against China, they've come after.
Right.
So that concerns me. And then you say we're not prepared to fight a true front war, but we have one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, people say, well, are we going to go to war? And that's a mute question. We are at war. We're at war almost on a 3 regional conflict. You know, Russia, Northern Europe to some degree, certainly Gaza, Israel, that whole Middle East. I'd say it's a Cold War at worst. I mean, at best,
right.
Even worse, you know, with what we see China doing. So.
And all that coming across the border.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk politics for a second,
sure.
because we need to have a directional change. You ran a campaign for my favorite presidential candidate, Dr. Ben Carson,
right.
Who's become a great friend of this program. What do you see politically happening with this lawfare against President Trump?
Yeah, well, first, I have great respect for Dr. Ben and Candy Carson. They're just wonderful. What do I see for President Trump? I think he's going to make it. I think my prayer, to be honest, over many years now, watching the liberal left get more liberal, the Democratic Party become undemocratic, and all those transitions, my prayer has been that they would overreach. I think they have badly overreached in so many areas. Some of them are going to hurt us nationally, internationally, but also it's going to hurt them politically. The American people are not dummies. They see the economy, they see the kitchen table, they see the price of gas, they see our dependence on foreign oil now, they see all that's at risk, and the American people, I think, are going to do the right thing. Is there going to be turbulence? Summer of '68 that I walked through with Democratic National Convention, 3 assassinations in that year, all that stuff, don't know, prayerfully not. And I think this ruse of people saying that Trump is bound to get revenge is just that. I don't know if you read the latest from the Biden campaign talking about President Trump and how he's going to exact revenge and all that. He is saying exactly the opposite. He's not going for revenge. He thinks that'll tear up the country. And yet the Democratic machine is putting that information out. It's as false as it could be about the president that we know.
The attempt is to divide the country,
sure,
and that's how you conquer, right? You divide
sure.
and conquer.
Yeah.
So I'm very concerned about what we're seeing politically, very concerned about what we're seeing internationally. I agree with you. I think the American people are very smart and are beginning to wake up. There's a media campaign to try and take us to false narratives, but I think that we have an opportunity. That's what we do here in Economic War Rooms, to help wake people up. These are pocketbook issues.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to need to take another break. But when we come back from this break, I want to talk about your National Center for Healthy Veterans. You said during the last break, you said that how America treats its veterans and first responders and so forth is an indication of how healthy we are as a society. I want to dig into that, and then I want to give our viewers a chance to learn how they could support the incredible work that you're doing. I know it's not far here from Liberty University. I love what you've been doing, and we'll take the break. When we come back, we will dive into National Center.
I'm Kevin Sorbo. When you spend money, you consider who you're buying from and the causes they support. If you don't, then you're likely supporting companies that are trying to destroy our country and take away our freedoms. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They're a cell phone company and a good one. They offer nationwide coverage on the best 4G and 5G networks along with 100% US-based customer support. But here's the deal. Patriot Mobile's mission has nothing to do with cell phones. They carry out their mission by giving back millions of dollars every year to Christian conservative causes that are actively engaged in the fight to save America. Voting is no longer enough to beat the woke. We have to band together, support like-minded companies, and vote with our dollars. That's how we win. Stop supporting companies that want to destroy America and join Patriot Mobile today by visiting patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
We're talking with retired Major General Bob Dees. He's a good friend. He's a great patriot. He knows a lot about everything happening in the world, but he's spending his time, much of his time, helping veterans be healthy. Tell us about the National Center for Healthy Veterans.
You bet. Well, first I would commend you and the Economic War Room, Kevin. It's just amazing. We're talking about all these daunting issues, and yet there's some good people fighting the fight, and you're one of them, so I honor you for that.
Oh, thank you so much.
So on the National Center for Healthy Veterans, lots of ways to approach this, but I wrote a book called Resilient Nations.
Great.
And in that, there's 10 pillars of American exceptionalism, and they talk about the importance of the moral, spiritual infrastructure infrastructure of America. And then it analyzes where we are as a nation. As I was thinking about that, I recently encountered some quote by Admiral Mike Mullen, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he was analyzing the strength of a nation. And he said the warning signals, two primary ones, is the education of the youth. When we quit educating our youth, when the standards drop, when we try to pack in woke cultural change instead of reading, writing, arithmetic, we're at great risk. Aristotle said the primary task any civilization is the education of its youth. The second thing is important, and it's the segue into National Center for Healthy Veterans. It says we as a nation must invest in our service-oriented industries. And what I'm talking about, the people that wear the cloth of the nation, first responders, military folks, veterans, and all of that, the policemen, et cetera. If we're not investing in them, we're failing as a nation, and our future is at risk. That's where we are right now. God bless the VA. They do great work, but they only touch 30% and help even less than 30% of the veteran demographic in America. As a result, I came to the conclusion as I was going through my military career, I saw suicide dynamics, mental and behavioral health. When we went to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, I saw that we hadn't quite adjusted to how do we take care of these people after the fact. There's new types of injuries, improvised explosive devices and so forth. And as a result, I said, we got to take a different approach. We need to reshape the nature of veteran care in America, and that in fact is our vision. How do we do it? We do it in two ways. First, we have a learning laboratory, Valor Farm, 339 acres. We have living in community to defeat isolation, one of the primary causes of veteran suicide. We give them dignified work to provide purpose and self-esteem. Again, countering suicide, mental and behavioral health, helping them regain self-esteem, purpose. Thirdly, we have faith-based trauma recovery and life skills programs. How do they gain emotional regulation? How do they recognize their triggers to PTSD, traumatic brain injury challenges, moral injury, adverse childhood experiences that have plagued them their whole lives? All of that is endemic to the veteran population, particularly the at-risk veterans we bring on. And then fourthly, how do we help them with career preparation? And to do all of this, we have a very intentional program. We teach them resilience. Resilience God style is the course of that. That's after we have a course here at Liberty, very similar. We've had 10,000 students go through in a decade, and it's the same type of course we're giving to our veterans. How do you identify the problems ahead of time, prepare yourself for the storms, weather the storms, after the fact, bounce back from the storms of life without getting stuck in all these toxic emotions of guilt, false guilt, anger, bitterness. So that's part of the curriculum, and there's a book series about that, resiliencetrilogy.org.
Right. What I love about it is that you treat human beings like human beings.
Right.
The bottom line, when my wife and I visited Valor Farms and saw it, you saw people. And it's about people. You have horses there and you have work there and it's a farm and so forth. But there are people recognizing that they're more than just a cog in a machine. And it ends the loneliness. Stella Morabito wrote an incredible book, The Weaponization of Loneliness. And we've had Stella on the program.
Oh, cool.
But you've found a way to unlock that code to get people into relationship, into community, into purpose. And I love it.
Right. 2 points. We say our intellectual property. We've got houses, horses, enablers, and things. But our real intellectual property is how do we rewire the brain? And we're very aggressive in learning new technologies and things. Rewire the brain, reshape the heart, restore the soul. That's what's really important for the person in that house. And that's our intellectual property. A lot of people around the country, frankly, they want to build houses, and that's good. But that's the first step, not the last step.
Right.
The second thing is we represent a crock pot in a microwave society. For the challenges we talk about, a weekend fly fishing trip, maybe it's feel good and so forth. We don't diss that. Maybe a retreat. But we are a 9-month residential program. we bring them in, and very intentionally, we ride the roller coaster with them. We bring them into cohorts. They have this group cohesion. We have missionals that live 24 hours a day with them. And all of that affects true life change. If you go into the empiricals about how do you change habits, change lifestyle and all that, it's not a short-term thing, it's a long-term thing. So we fight the recidivism that plagues so many veteran programs around the country. And we also represent a catcher's mitt. Some of these great one-week programs or whatever, they'll identify a few out of that need to come to our place because they need a true life reset.
Right.
We had a veteran come in, his family was there, and I asked the wife, why were you here? He was a Liberty graduate, she was a Liberty graduate. He was a very successful businessman. She said, short-term pain for long-term gain, because we have not been able to lick this thing, this trauma that came out of his military experience. I turned to the 13-year-old girl next to her side, and she said, we just want our daddy back. Okay, and so we're helping that family get their daddy back. And I asked him, after his first 11 weeks, he said, he gave a little talk. He said, I tried to outrun my trauma with my job, and it doesn't work. And I said, that's like trying to outrun your shadow. And so we help people deal with these true traumas in their life, and then we're giving daddies back to families.
Fantastic. And you do it for the success that you get at a relatively low cost.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, we've got a first village of 19 homes, and we're next week, in fact, we're starting excavation on a second village of 25 homes. And yes, we crank these folks through there. Each house is scholarshiped. The house sounds like a lot, but it's $60,000. But that's $60,000 for a house for at least the next decade or beyond. And every 9 months, we're cranking a new veteran through there. And then many hands make light work. We can use all the help we can get for equine therapy, for housing, for lodging. All those things are important ways people can help, and we invite them to do that.
Well, thank you so much for doing that. You can learn about this. Healthyveterans.org is one website, and resiliencetrilogy.org is where you can get the trilogy of books that talk about resilience in nations and so forth. So glad to have you here, General Dees. We're going to summarize all this in our free economic battle plan. You can get your copy at economicwarroom.com. We'll cover lots of topics here, and you'll get access to our show weekly. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.